Chapter 29, Section 5. An arms race threatens global destruction. On September 23, 1949, President Truman made a grim announcement. "We have evidence," he said, "that within recent weeks an atomic explosion occurred in the USSR." The statement alarmed Americans. Previously, only the United States had possessed an atomic bomb. Now that the Soviets had one as well, the United States felt the need to develop weapons with even greater destructive force. Soon, the two superpowers were locked in a deadly arms race, or a competition to achieve weapons superiority. The race to develop weapons of mass destruction. Shortly after the Soviet atomic test, American scientists began discussing plans for a new type of bomb. It would be based not on splitting atoms, the technology used in an atomic bomb, but on fusing them. Known as a hydrogen bomb or H-bomb, this weapon would be far more powerful than an atomic bomb. Some scientists, including J. Robert Oppenheimer, argued against it. In a report to the Atomic Energy Commission, he warned that the H-bomb was not a weapon which can be used exclusively for military purposes, since it would have a far greater effect on civilian populations than an atomic bomb would. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, the nation's top military leaders, disagreed. The United States, they said, would be in an intolerable position if a possible enemy possessed the bomb and the United States did not. When other scientists and Truman's advisors sided with the generals, Truman gave the green light for producing the hydrogen bomb. In 1952, the United States tested its first H-bomb. It was smaller than the atomic bomb dropped on Japan during World War II, but 500 times more powerful. A year later, the Soviet Union tested its own H-bomb. A witness at the Soviet test recalled how the earth trembled beneath us, and our faces were struck like the lash of a whip. From the jolt of the shock wave, it was difficult to stand on one's feet. Day was replaced by night. By 1960, the arms race had also led to the development of nuclear missiles and submarines. First, the United States and the Soviet Union built long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, which could deliver nuclear warheads to distant continents. Next, the United States developed nuclear-powered submarines that could launch up to 16 nuclear missiles from the water. The Soviet Union soon followed with its own nuclear submarines. With these new weapons, citizens of both nations faced the frightening prospect of enemy warheads raining down on their cities from far away. Brinksmanship, using the threat of war to contain communism. The threat of nuclear war carried with it the prospect of utter annihilation, a threat that the United States tried to use to its advantage. In the 1950s, the government developed a foreign policy known as brinksmanship, a willingness to go to the edge or brink of war. Brinksmanship was based on a simple, if dangerous, idea. According to Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, the Soviets had to believe that the United States would use its nuclear weapons if pushed too far. In a speech, Dulles declared, "You have to take chances for peace, just as you have to take chances in war. The ability to get to the verge without getting into the war is the necessary art. If you are scared to go to the brink, you are lost." To its critics, brinksmanship seemed foolhardy. It implied that the Soviets only understood force and assumed that they would back down if faced with the prospect of nuclear war. But Dulles believed that the United States had to be ready to go to war to keep the peace. A growing conflict in Asia soon tested this policy. In China, both communists on the mainland and nationalists in Taiwan claimed to be the nation's legitimate rulers. In 1954, Mao decided to assert China's claim to Taiwan and ordered his troops to fire on the nearby islands of Quemoy and Matsu. The nationalist government claimed these islands and feared that their loss to the communists would prompt an invasion of Taiwan. Eisenhower saw the shelling of Quemoy and Matsu as a challenge to American influence in Asia. As a result, the United States signed a treaty with the nationalist government promising to protect Taiwan in the case of attack. 3 years later, China resumed its assault. This time, the United States threatened to launch a nuclear attack on China, causing China to back off. In the eyes of the United States, the result was a victory for brinksmanship. Deterring attack by threatening mutual assured destruction. As the threat of nuclear war continued, Dulles developed a new strategy to reinforce brinksmanship and ensure American nuclear superiority. The strategy, called deterrence, revolved around developing a weapons arsenal so deadly that the Soviet Union would not dare to attack. Dulles also believed that warning the Soviets that any attack on the United States would be met with an even deadlier counterattack would reduce the threat of war. The combination of deterrence and the willingness to use nuclear weapons came to be known as Mutual Assured Destruction, MAD. It meant that either side would respond to a nuclear attack by launching its own missiles, with devastating results for both sides. Fear of a nuclear conflict made the United States and the Soviet Union more likely to step back from all-out war. However, while MAD may have helped to prevent the Cold War from turning hot, it also kept the world in a state of heightened anxiety.